very warm welcome to everybody. We are here for a session on reimagining digital learning and OER implementation in global education. It is a knowledge equity network session. If we can move to the next slide. This is wonderful. And the Knowledge Equity Network is all about unlocking knowledge to create a fair society. The principles are outlined on the right-hand side. It's based on universal, collaborative, inclusive, and sustainable development and collaboration as well. So the key recommendations of the Knowledge Equity Network, a network that has been co-founded by the University of Pretoria in the Global South and the University of Leeds in the Global North, is here and has articulated the recommendations you see here on the slide to encourage open and equity access, equitable access, to reduce inequalities, to boost that global collaboration that is so important across the sector, and recognize the importance of supporting all knowledge systems. We know that this collaboration that I've just highlighted is really of strategic importance for the global higher education sector. And we know that we do need to work together, not just in higher education, but also radically across the wider sector to reduce these inequalities that we said and make equitable access to knowledge for all, so we can help resolve some of the big challenges we are faced working together. At the moment, the Knowledge Equity Network has a declaration which has been signed by individuals and institutions and other organizations, as you can see here at the bottom of the slide, 319 individuals, 22 higher education institutions, 42 other organizations in 61 countries. That is a big achievement already for a relatively new initiative and global network. So we will share in the chat information about how you can find out more about the Knowledge Equity Network if you are new to it, and consider signing potentially the declaration as well. Today we are here to discuss this very newly published paper, An Introduction to Open Education Resources and their Implementation in Higher Education Worldwide. This has been co-authored by Javiera Atenas, Martin Ebner, Ulf Daniel Ehlers, Fabio Nasimbeni, and Sandra Schön. We are delighted. The link will be provided so you can access that during and after the conversation we are going to have. And we are delighted to have two of the co-authors here, Dr. Javiera Atenas and Dr. Sandra Schön. I haven't introduced myself yet. I'm not that important, but my name is Chrissi Nerantzi. I'm one of the senior leads of the Knowledge Equity Network at the University of Leeds, one of the three. The second one is Nick Shepard, and Professor Antonio Martinez Arboleda is the third one. I don't know if they are here. I think Antonio is actually here, so please say hello and introduce yourself in the chat as well. Thank you. So I'm going to introduce very briefly Javiera at the moment, and Sandra, and then we can hand over to our esteemed guests. So first of all, I met Javiera in 2015, so I know her for almost 10 years now. Dr. Javiera Atenas is a senior lecturer in learning and teaching and enhancement, and leads the PG CAP, a postgraduate teaching qualification, as we have these programs in the UK widely for academics who are joining. It's raining like mad here in the UK where I am at the moment. I hope you have better weather. Javiera holds a degree in library information science from Chile, then an MSc in knowledge management from Germany, and a PhD in education from Spain. So you already see the multicultural dimension of Javiera. She has also worked in Europe, across Europe, in Latin America, and the Middle East as a lecturer, researcher, and policy advisor in open education science and data, but also has done a lot of work on AI literacy. In the last few years, she has worked systematically on critical data literacies and is developing open education and science policies at large scale. Since 2019, she's the leading policy advisory team in the policy advisory team at the OE Open Education Policy Hub Lab, and supports the implementation of the UNESCO recommendations for open education, develop national and international policies. So this is very important work linked to the UNESCO coalition also. The list is lengthy. She's a very strategic leader across the open education movement, and works with a number of other organizations, also the European Open Education Policy Forum, Open Education Working Group, and Open Knowledge International, but also is a key member of the Committee for Recognition and Enhancement of Teaching Skills in the HE sector in the Italian National Evaluation Agency. As I said, she is prolific. She's a well-regarded and well-known academic scholar with a long record of not just activities, but very important outputs that influence the practices in open education. We'll go to Sandra Schön. Dr. Sandra Schön is a senior lecturer and senior researcher at the Institute of Interactive Systems and Data Science of Graz University of Technology in Austria. And she's a project manager there of the Forum New Media in Teaching Austria, Forum Neue Media in der Lehre in Graz, within the project Open Education Austria Advanced. She is responsible there for the implementation of the OER certification for Austrian universities. Has been doing that since 2000. And reading about it recently, I find it fascinating, that work, and think we have a lot to learn from that work, and we would like to continue the conversation and see how we can join up such initiatives, maybe also with things we could be doing as part of the Knowledge Equity Network, but also work here in the UK in higher education. She is an expert in innovation, in learning with technologies, technology and learning, and has connections and collaborates with a number of institutions in different parts of the world, in Europe, but also in Asia. An example is Indonesia, where she's an adjunct professor of innovations and learning. And she also has some collaborations with the International Hellenic University in Greece. I would love to hear more about that as well. So she has been working for a long time in the sector as well, similar to Javiera, has been producing OER. I don't know if you hear the weather that has hit us at the moment, but it is really very wintry, I have to say, blustery rain. So she has produced a large number of outputs, OER, and is an ambassador of the open education movement. And she has won several awards on her open textbooks and other related projects, including massive open online learning. She has been involved in strategic initiatives in Austria and beyond around the open movement. And we are delighted that both of you have joined us, Javiera and Sandra, to discuss this significant paper with us and the collaboration you had with the other three colleagues who unfortunately couldn't join us today. So starting the conversation, I think we can remove the slides. I think they have been removed already. What I would like to do is just ask you maybe an opening question around how this paper came about. What is it about, and where is this leading you now? Who would like to make a start?
I think this paper comes from a collaboration from a long time. We did plenty of activities together with Sandra, with Martin, with Fabio, and other colleagues. And at some point, some ideas were coming up, and we saw, I think it was Martin who saw the call for papers and invited us to collaborate in this paper as well, Sandra. One of the interesting things about this paper is something that we need to mention. It's the world changed between we wrote it and it got published, because the times of academia are the times of academia. And I think it passed nearly 3 years, Sandra, if I'm not wrong, since we first wrote it. So as you can see in the paper, if you have the opportunity to read it, you will see that there are some gaps and things that maybe we need to address in a future paper. Hopefully it doesn't take so long to get published again. But yeah, it's a collaboration from a group of people, colleagues, and I think we kind of enthusiasts and advocates for open education that have been working for quite a while together.
That's great. So it was an established collaboration among the 5 of you, perhaps working on different projects already, and then say, hey, let's do this. This is important work that we should be doing. You just said something there, Javiera, about it took 3 years, a long time for publication. And often we see that people publish an open access publication to speed up the process. Generally, it is actually faster, but there can be delays, as you just evidenced. So if that weight wasn't there, is there something you would have done differently, perhaps in the paper? Would the focus be slightly different, especially with developments we had in the last 2 years? I'm just wondering. I don't know if Javiera or Sandra would like to answer.
Sandra?
I guess you already started in the preparational meeting, so I think what we didn't insert it in that paper, because we have to add here, it is not because of our current publisher that it took so much time. The 3 years are about that we were rejected so first of all we wanted to publish that paper as a chapter in a book, and then we were rejected because it was not just fitting. We weren't recognizing enough or well enough the theoretical concept of the editor of this book, so we were forced to find a way to get published. So open access publishing is typically doesn't take so much time, but that book before was taking a lot of this time. Yeah, and what we miss is, so because it's now 3 years old, is that we missed especially artificial intelligence and all that impacts on open educational resources and open science in general. I think that is the most important thing that's currently missing. Nevertheless, the idea, at least from my perspective, was because I missed such a kind of paper from my lectures. We do have a lecture at TU Graz in Austria about open educational resources since some years now, and we missed a paper to just give a good overview about what is OER in the sector of higher education, and tried to get a global view. I'm not so sure if this is really what you will find in that paper, because we have a good overview, but not a very well-connected overview into all parts of this world. So there might be some missing things as well, especially because we all have to use that English language, which is not used in all parts of the world.
Thank you so much, Sandra. And you highlight already some of the challenges, but potentially also opportunities. One of the things you said is, I think that you showed flexibility what you did with the paper, isn't it? One rejection doesn't mean that there is no value in it. Open educators are quite resourceful and inventive in finding solution and finding avenues to make that, to spread that message, to spread the love of open education. I can see what you say there, that this is an introductory chapter, perhaps sort of a positioning paper for those new to open education. But I think there are things you mentioned in there that will help also more experienced colleagues in open education. The issue raised there about this is written in English and what that means for for wider reach and inclusion and equity is something I think we can pick up in our conversation, also relating to other issues such as copyright or Creative Commons licenses, etc. Javiera, is there anything you would like to add?
I think what we did with this paper is, of course, trying to also introduce perspectives from our practices. We are not just theorists of open education, we're all practitioners. We all work in and with open education. We develop capacity, we train people, we work in different sectors, we work with different people. So what we try to do is also give us not simplified perspective, but a global perspective into what open education practice, what OER means, and actually addressing some of the challenges that we have, for example, copyright.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that is a useful introduction to frame the conversation. Our colleagues here, Javiera and Sandra, have prepared a brief presentation to further frame the paper, and then we will have a discussion around this. Sandra, if you would like to go ahead and start that, so that you and Javiera can introduce us to it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So here you can just have a glimpse on the male colleagues as well, who are co-author of this paper, Martin, Ulf, and Fabio. So from Austria, Germany, and Italy. And what is a part of the first introductional thing is this illustration where we highlight what is currently the key understanding of OER, which is typically, and this builds up on UNESCO recommendations and a lot of other national and international policy papers, are open license. Open license are contracts which describes on a very formal way that it is allowed, and you got the permission to use a certain material for your educational, learning, and other adventures. Yeah, and then of course, if you have this allowance, you can do a lot. If you are free to use something that includes, in that case of this open license as well, to republish them, to revise them, to make them better, to make them different, and so on. And you can as well get money for this. So this is included as well. You are really not only allowed to do something, you didn't only get the permission. I can as well say you are invited to do this, because if people are so keen to add an open license, they know what they do, and you can feel invited. Yes, and on the next slide, what we did as well, we of course gave a short overview of some history, and I think, yeah, Javiera might like to say something about these milestones. Oh, you are muted.
Please switch on, yeah, your mic.
Muted. Why should I? I think open education is not something that it's been steady since it was first defined. The definitions has been growing, changing. Of course, there are many agendas pulling for a definition. But I think if we start thinking about where it comes from, the first definition of open education resources comes from in 2002 in MIT courseware summit with UNESCO. There have been plenty of declarations, plenty of manifestos in that during this period of time. Plenty of new initiatives. Of course, it was open courseware, which is kind of the foundational stone of what we have done with open education. So liberating courses from paid access in the United States. There are fair recognition of open education and OER by the European Commission. There is the Open Education Declaration from Paris in 2012. There is the Ljubljana Action Plan 2017. And hopefully soon we're going to have something. Well, of course, there is the 2019 declaration and recommendation on OER from UNESCO, which actually set up the guidelines for policy and innovation and investing in the development of capacities in open education. And hopefully soon it's going to be another one. something it's cooking now for the Dubai OER World Congress, which will happen in November. So there's going to be another manifesto. So we're going to keep adding flags and lines and years to that little milestone graph.
Yes, and you can see here why we collaborated, because if I have Javiera on my side writing a paper, she just knows all policies by heart, and I don't need to make any research for that anymore, because you just write it down. Thanks. Yes, and I have to add, we don't work formally together. We never did. So we made a keynote together already. We made a lot of translations of OER canvases. I added the link inside the chat. So that might be something, Chrissi, where you already referred to, though. So I guess this is, in that case, we don't needed any formal possibilities to work together. We just do that. Can I say it like this? No, nobody to ask. We just try to collaborate because it's fitting very well. Yeah, and then coming back to the paper and the chapter. Oh, it is an article now currently. What we did here as well, we tried to figure out what are the key arguments in the debate, and as well concerning criticism in the field of OER. And you can, I think it's very easy just to read, and I think free education is one single thing. I think we all agree that the open teaching practices are a very important aspect of OER, because OER can be seen as the basis for that. From me, as someone from Middle Europe, legal issues are a big thing. That might be different if you are from the US, you have their fair use. It might be different if you're working in Asia and Africa, because copyright issues are sometimes not so important and no real restrictions for you, but that might be different as well. Yeah, you can see what we additionally highlighted here. Of course, new business models are needed because everything works different. OER competence is a thing. We as well said there are some, not a lot, but there are some who says it's as well a sort of imperialism, and that especially if you consider that MIT, for example, opened all their courses to the world already, I think, 18 years ago, there might be, of course, some implications. What does it mean that, yeah, a certain group or a certain country or a certain organization or firm invest in OER, and this might be as well a critical issue, not general view for OER. It's not an argument against OER, but of course we see that in Germany and Austria as well, that some firms and organizations invest in OER because they are so easily to reach and they are used in schools. And yeah, we have to do, I think, as well OERs to give some alternatives. But I guess
thank you.
Gives a
Yes,
lot
can
of
we
discussion.
Thank you, Sandra. Can we unpack some of the items here you have on your list? Perhaps, I don't know if Javiera would like to add something. I'm particularly interested, for example, on the second point that you're making about better, in brackets, open teaching practices. And I think in your paper, you highlight that it is very common for educators, open and non-open educators, if you like, at the moment, to use other people's resources that they find, and remix and reuse them for the student, not necessarily in how we see it as open educators and open practitioners, maybe still a bit hesitant to share, to package them for reuse and adaptation. So Javiera, can you tell us maybe a little bit about this and how open education can actually help colleagues and students? I would like to include, because you also talk about co-creation in that article, and we know that through that co-creative process in OER, including open educational practices as well, we can make that happen and work in partnership with our students. Javiera, thank you.
One of the things that is quite interesting, and we've seen it during the pandemic, it's when we talk about developing better practices and developing collaborative practices and developing practices that can be shared, not just resources, but also the practice. Is when we saw, for example, the codependency of platforms for students, and this is an issue mostly in the US, that they are codependent of textbooks. That's what most of the movement in the United States and Canada has to deal with. It's the dependency, not even codependency, it's the dependency of textbooks. We saw it in the UK during the pandemic. Textbooks and digital textbooks or ebooks raised about 700% in prices. Universities couldn't afford resources anymore. And one of the things that open education resources provide is kind of this flexibility to adapt to something that is being created by one of your peers, because one of the things that we cannot forget, and it's regardless where we work, another academic in another country, in another continent, are equal. So we need to trust their quality, we need to trust their work, but also we need to be able to adapt and contextualize the context to our own environments. It allows you to think differently. And one of the things I admire Chrissi Nerantzi for is her work in creativity. Working with open educational practices with OER facilitates creation, facilitates creativity, but also thinking ways of teaching in a different way. So when we talk about quality, it's not just the quality of the content that is almost encyclopedic. It's actually content that can be tailored and can be taught in a way that facilitates and enhances learning, rather than, oh, this textbook is really high quality. No, the ways that we are teaching it, also giving the students the opportunity to develop learning and teaching resources, so co-teach with us, be our partners, to work and adapt all the learning materials to make sure that it's understandable for the peers, to make sure that students with learning disabilities understand the content and the context well, which is a flexibility that rigid textbook, rigid materials, they are, aka regarded as very high quality because it's just been written by a bunch of experts and published in a very renowned publisher, doesn't mean much. So when we talk about quality education, we talk about flexibility and innovation, also creativity.
That's wonderful to hear. And you see, it seems like open education, a vehicle to increase that quality through that very open, transparent, and collaborative, isn't it, process of co-creation and co-experiencing something, documenting that and learning together in flexible and imaginative ways. And we often talk about the student experience and how we know educators are innovating because they're keen to create these exciting, stimulating learning experiences. But I think open educators are also realizing that, well, I need to enjoy it as well as an educator. And I think working together, as you both already said, beyond formal contracts, beyond formal agreements, is something I think that we need to shout a bit more about the potential, because sometimes innovators in their own institutions can feel lonely as well. So nobody can stop us to work with others across institutions, across cultures, across continents as well. Great. Sandra.
Yeah, I would just directly go on with this, and I would like to show what our first collaboration produced. So I added already the link to how we met first. So Martin Ebner and me made an OER canvas, which was thought as a paper which give some a template you can fill out to organize your future OER project. And Javiera has seen that because she's able to speak and read German, and asked if it wouldn't that be nice to translate that. And we did translate that into English. And then she said, oh, I can ask my people from the Open Knowledge Foundation if they are just interested to support this, that we can find translation from others as well. And if you I will just re-add that link. If you have a look on that page, you can see there are versions of that OER canvas, which I cannot just read because they are Nepali, for example. So we were just like, what is that? Sorry for if somebody from Nepal is there. I was just wondering what is these signs. So and then I have seen it's Nepali. So this is really great, and you can see this is how open education and OER works, because people feel invited or can feel invited to collaborate, because it's not only permitted, it's completely okay, and you can feel welcome to spread something and to collaborate. And this is, I think we cannot overemphasize that it's not only a formal issue, but an invitation for do something together and just take it and make it better even. So people, I think that it might be part of that we all agree on that others could make our things better. So for me, this is quite a part of the game that I expect that others might make it better than myself.
Yeah, and if you look at the list, it's quite funny. I haven't seen this for ages. Fabio did the Italian version.
Good to know. Good to know. So our
Yeah,
co-author then, okay. Eventually
yeah.
was the
But
first.
also we managed to get languages that you normally don't get. They're not massive. We have Catalan, Finnish, Galician, what else? Montenegrin. That was Nadasa Perovic, which I worked with at UCL at the time. Of course, we have like Slovenian, like Davor. So it was pretty cool. And people were just like, we were just sending the word out, like, hey, it was a call, like, hey, can anyone translate this? And in a matter of a month, we had like plenty of translations, and people was like, yep, I've done it. And it was so simple to do. It was just basically adapting a Word document.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating to listen to both of you. We have a question which I'm going to ask in a minute from colleagues who have joined us here. But first of all, what I'm hearing is it's okay not to share something that is perfect. Now, many educators would have an issue with that because they feel they will be judged on what they're sharing, and what they're sharing may not be good enough. I'm just wondering, what could you tell them to say, hey, what would you say? What would you say to them to overcome that potential hurdle, barrier?
Perfection is actually a devil. People things need to be good, need to be good for your people, need to be good for your student, need to be good for your colleague, need to be flexible. Don't seek perfection. That makes no sense. Try your best. Try your best, like, to develop things that can be useful for others. The others might fix it. When I cook in my house, I never put salt because I don't know how to manage salt, because my grandma used to. She taught me how to cook, and she couldn't use salt. People just put salt on it and fixes these things. And I'm still happy to take food everywhere, even though it's saltless. But it's okay. I've done my best. Otherwise, I have to buy something, and it's not going to taste the same because I didn't do it. So in the sense of like open education, just do your best. Just share. Someone said, "Oh, this is really good. Thank you. I love it." So it's like, good, do better. Do better. Be my guest. Go ahead.
Yeah.
It's just about like, take it in a very kind of, don't take any pressure on yourself for doing something. If you're proud of something that you have created, if you're proud of something that can be useful for everyone, and this is something that we are really concerned in our field at open education. But I've seen people releasing code for open source that comes with bugs, and people is like, oh, found the bug, fixed it, off you go. So I think we need to take an approach that's more close to open software and people coding together, which the code will come with errors, but still do the trick, and then errors can be fixed in code. We are very concerned about like, oh, my OER is not perfect. Just look at the software development. developers how they do it. Every time you open GitHub to get a piece of code, it's open, it's free, it's available for everyone. You will have to debug it.
Yeah, and they build on each other's work, isn't it, and make it better, as you say. So there is really a lot to learn from the open source movement that has been going for many decades, for many decades. And yeah, it's freeing ourselves, as you say, from that that perception of I'm not good enough, or what I'm making is not good enough to be shared. But it can grow, it can evolve, it can develop, and ideas that we restrict and don't share actually don't have a long lifespan. So great, thank you so much. Should we maybe go to one of the questions we have received, and that takes us to AI. So the question is, do you think we should start to include AI open the language models and truly open chat box, truly open, we can unpack that, as OER, providing that they are fully open? Do we need to develop guidelines about this and what open chatbots are and what they are not? How would you like to respond to AI? We are getting into the area of AI now in open education, which we know that there are many challenges, but what about open chatbots?
Yeah, I would like to be concentrate on, I think, what is open OER, and OER are open licensed issues, open licensed objects, resources, and very pragmatically, AI is here a big source and opportunity, because at least in most parts of the world, as far as I know, machines are not able to gain any copyright. So all these products delivered by AI machines and products are typically copyright free. At least this is currently the case. And so far, this is really gave a tremendous impact on which kind of OER we can produce. For example, I would just like to show you, because I think it fits in a way here, what we made. We made a multilingual course where we used AI to produce different versions of the videos. So we used avatars and HN as a tool, and we were able to not only produce the videos themselves, we were able to as well add an open license on it. And again, this is again a similar story like our Canvas, because we were able to use an open license using AI in the production of that video. We found so many collaborators, and a lot of people felt invited to collaborate with us to additionally produce language versions. So currently that OER course about OER, so it's a course as OER about OERs, is produced in 11 languages. Arabic will be the next, so we already got the version, but it needs to be implemented within the next weeks. So it's like kind of story how here artificial intelligence is a big important factor for OER. But this was not a precise answer for the questions, because this was about language models and a more an ethical and additional questions. And I think in that case, Javiera is the one who should answer, because she's part of the policy group as well.
I think we need to make a distinction between the different elements in case of AI. Basically, a chatbot is just a bunch of code. If the code is open, is released, is per se an open resource. We need to be careful on how we feed the data on the chatbot, where the data will come from. So kind of how the chatbot will learn to answer questions. But if it's something to support students to navigate, for example, content in their online campuses, I think it's a good idea. I don't think we need to focus on guidelines on what an open chatbot is. It's basically develop an OER on people to develop chatbots. That is something that it's quite easy. Developing the chatbot is just a bunch of code. What I think we need to start looking is, so if we're going to develop chatbots, how are we going to train people into understanding safeguarding and privacy? Chatbots are, I think, older than me, which is quite a lot. And basically, chatbots answer data. So if we look about, for example, and this is some ideas that I've heard in the universities about, like, oh, let's create a chatbot that will tell students they are not engaging enough with the content. That's actually a punishing chatbot, or like a stopping chatbot. We need to be careful with what the chatbot does itself. Is the chatbot gonna co-tutor or support students with learning disabilities? So are we feeding the data from learning disabilities unit or a student support unit into a chatbot, and can anyone just basically grab the code and see which students have disabilities? Are the chatbot gonna provide support or extra support from students from the background? So they're gonna use socioeconomic data to feed into a chatbot. I think beyond like teaching how to do a chatbot, we need to start looking, when we develop AI-enabled tools, is to look in safeguarding the data for students, safeguarding the data for the lecturers, for the educators, for teachers, and start developing OERs on how to develop chatbots, for example, for people that just want to. So maybe students can learn to develop a chatbot and can enhance and prepare code from GitHub, from people that are already sharing their chatbot initiatives. But I think chatbots, if literature could start kind of describing how to build a chatbot in 1982, or no, I think in the first paper I think it was 1978, so it's older than me.
Yeah, so some important issues there you highlight, opportunities and challenges. As you say, is it just the code? Is it what we feed the machine, isn't it? And if that machine is code or data that is open, then the chatbot will be open as well. But by default, if we are working like that. I have heard recently a lot about how students are using AI, and I'm sure many colleagues are here. Some of you may even have authored further work around this, but students seem to be reaching out to generative AI platforms to get support for their learning. And I think if chatbots, for example, because we talked about chatbots, could become a source for additional help and support 24/7, that perhaps reduces the dependency that students may feel, we know that some of them do feel, on tutor support, that could be a good thing potentially. Sandra, what do you think? And then we'll move forward to another question we have.
We guessed that as well. So what we did at TU Graz, we just published a chat support for our MOOC participants. But I might add here something which might be important as well for people considering how easy or not easy it is to fill a chatbot as well, because in our case, as all MOOCs are openly available and open licensed, we were allowed to train the chatbot with our materials. But as we are in a part of the world where copyright issues are a thing, we cannot do that easily for other parts of the university. So for us, it was legally a very good, but more or less only opportunity to develop and now to test that opportunity, because we can take all these materials which are available under open license. So this is as well part of that, how AI and OER is connected. And of course, I know most of the people ignore that sources for trainings of all these AI tools are not available in a way that this is allowed. But yeah, we are at least, and this limits a lot the possibilities, but opens it for the materials that we do have, which are available as open educational resources. So this might a way of a connection. And of course, I think, for example, in Germany, we do have an organization who brings together all open educator called Bündnis Freie Bildung, Organization for Free Education. And they as well highlighted that AI is very important for open education, very generally, because all these things like people are enabled to ask a machine, a tutor, but at least it's a machine, and to rearrange their own learning while using such an possibility is part as well of open education, which is not easy. So coming back to Javiera, not only AI is a competence issue, we as well have to think about literacy concerning learning in the next years. Because I have to understand that a simple chatbot can deliver me like multiple choice questions, a simple introduction, and so on. I only have to ask. It can deliver me like a learning plan for the next 3 weeks, but I have to ask and I have to be aware that there's a possibility. And this is where we have to be reassured that we get the people into that way, because self-organized learning was always a big and important thing, and it's not easy.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sandra, for these thoughts. A lot to think about, I think, for all of us, and the issues you highlight, issues that are far beyond AI, because the conversations these days seems to be dominating by AI, but there are other fundamental issues I think we do need to address, and AI will then solve itself potentially if we solve some of the other issues. I would like us to go to a question on observation we got from Niam Brennan. It's in our Q&A, who talks about making OER compliant with the FAIR principle, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. With assistance, they have done it with assistance of our libraries. So the libraries play a key role in making these resources accessible and discoverable by others. So they say depositing them in the institutional repositories, applying the metadata, identifiers, and licenses make them more discoverable and accessible. So is this something that universities should be doing more to encourage educators and students? Again, I would like to emphasize to share their work through open repositories they may have internally within the institution, but also cross-institutional repositories potentially as well. So why should somebody do that, though? Javiera?
I think, and I really like Niv's position. One of the problems that we have had in the open education community is that we have different sets of guidelines than open science, open access, open research. And I much prefer to follow the FAIR principles than the 5 Rs. The FAIR principles are democratically being agreed amongst other communities. The 5 Rs is just sort of commandment from someone in the US. And I think there are two important things that we need to start looking when we think about like developing OER from now on. Is first that they meet the FAIR principles, because actually the establishment of those principles and those standards for open science are key to advance knowledge, to make sure that things can be reused, that data sets, papers, lab books, test experimentations can be used, and they are interoperable. If we look at the cemetery of open education resources repositories, it's actually quite large. There were a boom between, let's say, 2010 and 2014, and then suddenly everything disappeared because they were disconnected from other repositories at the institutions. They didn't have the same support at the institutional level that the open access repositories have, because in the case of the UK, they are a compliance instrument for REF and for quality of research. But also, the schemes of metadata, this is something that Leo Havemann and I worked when we were younger. Hi, Leo. We worked when we were younger we talk about quality standards. We talk about mostly like open educational practices within the standards rather than a technical standard. But one of our recommendations was to follow standards that were more open rather than, oh, does that meet the 5 hours or not? Doesn't matter if it meets the 5 hours or not. Is the OER findable? Is it accessible? Is it interpretable? Is it reusable? This is, I think, is key on what you mentioned, and I think we need to advocate more for those sorts of infrastructures. But when we talk about infrastructures, there's another point that I like to bring into the table. We need to start looking at open educational resources as digital public goods. And this is something that we will be discussing in the upcoming OER World Congress. I'm just going to share the link now, but digital public goods include digital infrastructure to make knowledge accessible. So we need to start looking towards how do we develop OER with the ethos of this is a public digital asset, a public digital good. And when we create infrastructures to host OER, they need to be under the umbrella of the FAIR principles. I totally agree with you. And hopefully, if you can send me your email, I'd love to chat with you about it. Annie, that'll be great.
Great, thank you very much for that insightful response and the invitations on Neem to follow this up. Wonderful. Good. I think we have a little bit more time. We are coming to the end of our exciting conversation here, and we could keep going for a few hours at least, I think, with both of you and everybody else here. Just a final question, maybe more generically, and it's one of the questions that was asked. What's the relationship between open education, open research, and I would add maybe open scholarship, because we hear about open scholarship a lot. How do you see these three terms, areas, definitions that are associated with these, and what does this mean for the open movement and what you just said, Javiera, these public goods and open practices? Sandra, would you like anybody who would like to start?
I thought that Javiera would like to start, but of course I can from my European-centric perspective, this is something what we missed to highlight, at least in our chapter, and coming back to this chapter as well. I think when I think about how I argue when I make OER workshop, which I do since 18 years now, I think I was one of the first who did OER workshops. First of all, I always started with, let's have a better world. Yeah, free education is what we want to have. Then I thought that it's not convincing to everybody. Obviously, not everybody is such a world changer like me and wants to make something better. And especially talking to universities, I have learned copyright issue is a thing. So now I always start with copyright issues. Why everything is not possible, and why open educational resources and open license are a solution for that. But this changed as well. So since about 5 years, 3 years, at least in Europe, I can go to a university and say, you have to be you are a competitor. Yeah, you want to have extra funds, money from the European Union, for example. Your people have to know what OER is. They have to learn about open license. And this is part of that open science world. So it's about knowing what FAIR principles are, if you have to submit open data because you got some money from the European Commission and so on. And this is a completely new argumentation for me that it's not fitting at all to my starting point to say, let's have a better world, because now I go and have a capitalistic argument and say, okay, you have to train your people in open license if you want to compete and get fundings from the European Commission. And that changed a lot. This is not meant by open science, but it comes to my mind when you ask about what is the broader issue. And currently OER is seen as a part of open science, at least in my part of the world. And this brings up a new argumentation for why it is important. Just a story of mine, sorry.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Javier?
Sorry, I was muted. I think this is a good time. Sorry, school just started and I just got the first bag of the year. We need to start thinking about openness in a much broader way. We still have discussions in the open education world, as well as happening in the open science world, about where is the umbrella? Okay, who sits under which part of the umbrella? And when we talk about openness, I think there is some cohesion in the ethos in what people want. Of course, there are different interests, different agendas. But when I talk about open education and when I train the people and when I try to develop curriculum about open education, it's about thinking on how your work, which should be based on evidence. So that's why open research is really important, and open scholarship is really important. How you evidence-based work can build a wealth of knowledge in the shape of open educational resources, but also in the shape of open data, in the shape of materials or repositories that can make knowledge more accessible. I think, and stop this codependency in certain parts of the world of resources that actually call good quality, but when the quality assurance mechanisms are made by the same group of people, is of course they're going to get a golden star. And I think it's because also how fast knowledge advances, how we can make the best of the tools we have, how can we use the tools we have in a responsible way, how we make sure that we mitigate environmental and human impact when we work with AI technology, how we make sure that we are respectful and understanding of copyright and intellectual property, but also how we actually collaborate better and we create a wealth of knowledge that is freely accessible for everyone. And there's certain agendas, so education for peace, making sure that the knowledge is distributed equally around the world. So we're going to look at a much bigger increase in, for example, displaced persons. How we're going to make sure that they get access to education in zones of conflict. So I think it's brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you both of you.
I fully agree on that, and I would like to add and highlight that if none of the current arguments are convincing you or your organization to do something on OER or open education, I think the Sustainable Development Goals are a very important reason for that as well, because OER is part of that, has to be part of that. You cannot understand quality in education without OER or open education. And I think if this is your reason to start working in the field of open science, or open education, and OER, it's as well a very good thing to start.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sandra, for making that link so explicit, because it is often forgotten, and often open education is seen as something like an add-on, something that sits outside, but it's at the heart of the SDGs. I think that's what we are trying to say, and underpins all the SDGs, because without education for all, how can we actually achieve anything in this world? So we are all committed. We want the movement to grow. We know that through that collaboration, we can achieve so much more. It may be how we communicate these messages also to the wider community to get a better understanding, clearer understanding about what open education is about, and how that contributes significantly and fundamentally to achieving working towards the SDGs. Colleagues, we have one more final question. We know it's already half past, and normally we would go. It is fascinating. We have one more question, and I'm dying to ask this. And this is about something linked to what Sandra and Javiera were just saying about sometimes there is funding available for creating OER, creating open courses, etc., but not always, as we have seen, and Javiera, Sandra, and colleagues who have co-authored this have modeled it. This is an informal collaboration without any funding, often working in our own time, in their own time, producing outputs for the universe, if you like. So should that work, the question is, should that work be rewarded in some way? What should institution do? What is their responsibility to not just acknowledge and celebrate, but also reward these efforts and these contributions that they are making? Because higher education institution, and if we think about research, it's very much about research income that is generated. Now, we have a lot of outputs that are for the social good. So is there a different currency perhaps that needs to be used for the outputs that are produced by many open scholars, and I include open researchers and open educators at the same time? What can you give us some ideas? What's in your mind at the forefront of your thinking at the moment? If you would be talking to a vice chancellor at the moment and had that opportunity to make a case to get that acknowledgement from the work that open educators are doing, often in their spare time, with no resources, no time, no workload allocation, no funding, what would you tell them they need to change? Javiera.
One of the things I admire the most from getting input from other open movements is what COARA is doing for open science, that promotes the schemes for reward and recognition of open research, not just open publication, but just the methodologies around open science. The only R's that I think we should start including on top of OER is also reward and recognition. Reward people practices, promote the work, put it as a criteria for career progression. I'm very lucky that we're working at an institution that actually we're working towards being part of the COAR agreement, and we have support from other institutions, including Leeds, that they have these reward and recognition schemes for career progression. And one of the elements is open research, open cultures, open practices. And I think moving towards, and actually I'm looking at the agreements in here. Recognizing and rewarding, for example, peer review, rewarding and recognizing any other open practice is quite important. And I think following values and principles and standards from open science into open education, same as the FAIR principles, just have like a model from like COARA for reward and recognition, it will be really important. Chris, of course, is a professor in open education, so we have the hope that we will manage to get there at some point, because some people manage to do it and their work, it's been widely recognized. Of course, there are all the schemes in the country that recognize, at least in the UK, that recognize those practices, like Principal Fellowship of Advanced HE or National Teaching Fellow, but it needs to be a better kind of harmonized approach. In the European Union, it's having something around through the COAR agreements. I don't know, Sandra, what's going on that side of Europe?
Yeah, I think in my case, in the higher education field, it's very simple. We do have, for example, the age index, as you said, as well. So we have a way of recognition, hard work of researchers, but not hard work of lecturers, and not all in the field of open education. So if I had a talk with my vice rector, I would say, just ask if you have a new applicant for a professorship, ask him or her what she has done in the field of open education. If she cannot answer, the next will do. Hopefully, at least, if they spread the word about that. And of course, this won't change the world. It might be a good first step. And there might be as well the opportunity to use tools like Zenodo, or we as well. For example, my colleagues at TU Graz are responsible for the OER repository building up on Zenodo, which is in Venio. It's it's in a cooperation with CERN. They developed an own repository, better addressing OER issues like metadata you need there. And if you have such a system for a broader world like Europe or the world in generally, of course, then you can add as well some lists of what did a person there here or there. But nevertheless, I already I didn't talk to my vice rector, but I talked to my girls, which are both students, and asked if you have the opportunity and and they had already the opportunity and can go to in Austria and Germany, these applications are open to students. And if a professor apply for a person applying for a professorship, please ask what they did they done in the field of open education and OER, because this is helpful. And students you can empower them if they know what to ask, and this might be a very simple but first step. Another story, just as a small add-on in our OER policy. So we are one of the universities who have an OER policy. We said, or the rector said, that he agrees on that the teaching award is always connected to OER. So you won't get a teaching award at TU Graz if it's not delivered with OER. A very simple step, because then you have to reconsider why it's not possible getting a teaching award for me. What do I have to change? And then he or she can go to my colleagues. We have support for them and figure out what to do. If this is a way.
This is a good idea, I think, that may be attractive to other colleagues who are here, who may be listening to the recording. So open build into the teaching awards, something to think about, definitely, together with all the other things you shared, your experiences and your wisdom, and the cases you have been involved. It has been fascinating. We will bring this session to an end. A big thank you to Javiera and Sandra for being with us, for sharing so many interesting and useful things and positions with us. We are delighted that you were with us, and thank you everybody for their questions. Thank you also for writing that very useful paper together with Martin, Ulf, Daniel, and Fabio, who couldn't be with us today. We hope to invite them at a later stage for another exciting conversation. So keep cooking, as Javiera said. I think it's the message. Spread the love for open education, because open education is education is learning for all, and that only can mean a better world for us all and the future generation to come. Thank you so much. This is the end of the session. We will advertise more sessions coming this academic year. If you would like to propose something, if you would like to facilitate a session and share some of the work you are doing in different parts of the world, we are very interested, and please get in touch. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and bye-bye for now.